everybody, and welcome to Movie Recaps with Brit. Today, we will be taking a look at a movie titled Root of Problem. Without further ado, let's get started. Paul Campbell, a Canadian real estate agent, possesses a distinct approach to accomplishing tasks which can be regarded as dishonest. Instead of repairing or improving the properties he intends to sell, he simply conceals their flaws with miscellaneous items. Regrettably for Paul, the majority of his clients quickly become aware of his deception and depart within the initial 5 minutes. Consequently, he has become an incredibly unsuccessful real estate agent, leading to a modest lifestyle for himself and his family, devoid of any luxuries. Upon returning home from work one day, Paul receives the heartbreaking news of his dear uncle's passing. Although devastated by the loss, he experiences conflicting emotions when he discovers that his uncle, who had no other relatives, was a millionaire. This revelation implies that Paul is the sole heir to his uncle's vast fortune. However, his excitement is short-lived as he meets the uncle's lawyer, who informs him that the old man had actually donated all his wealth to charitable causes. The only inheritance Paul receives is a small plant. Frustrated and irritated, he takes the plant with him and heads home. The following morning, over breakfast, Paul remains in a sour mood. He reproaches his children for supposedly spending excessive amounts of money, oblivious to the fact that they have barely spent $20 throughout the week. Unbeknownst to Paul, his refusal to provide them with pocket money has caused them to develop a dislike for him. Following breakfast, Paul proceeds to clear out a storage room located in his backyard and places the plant inside. Despite his lingering anger towards his late uncle, he decides to display some level of respect by watering the plant. To his astonishment, as soon as he does so, a surprising occurrence takes place. A $100 bill unexpectedly emerges from the plant. Overwhelmed with disbelief, Paul quickly plucks the bill and stares at it in awe. This is the moment he realizes that the plant is not an ordinary one, but rather a genuine money plant. Intrigued to learn more, Paul's family suddenly arrives at the scene. However, instead of revealing his newfound treasure, he skillfully changes the subject and dismisses them. It is evident that he intends to keep his money plant a secret from his family. The following day, upon returning from work, Paul anxiously makes his way to the storage room to ascertain whether the plant has yielded additional money. Much to his satisfaction, the money plant is adorned with thousands of dollars, allowing Paul to continuously reap the rewards while keeping it concealed from his family. One fateful day, an elderly man named Tim arrives at Paul's doorstep, claiming to have been his deceased uncle's closest companion. Tim humbly requests a modest donation for his organization, and Paul, overwhelmed by his exceedingly good mood, writes a generous check of $1,000. This unexpected act surprises the entire family, prompting them to confront Paul regarding his newfound wealth. However, instead of honestly divulging the truth, Paul once again resorts to deception, stating that his recent prosperity stems from a series of successful property sales. As time progresses, Paul's financial situation takes a dramatic turn, transforming him into a wealthy individual. He embraces a new lifestyle, donning designer clothing and bidding farewell to his previously worn-out and tattered attire. Moreover, he graciously bestows $200 as pocket money upon each of his children, fostering an atmosphere of genuine happiness within the household, a rare occurrence after years of discontent. In the subsequent sequence, we witness a complete transformation in Paul's demeanor. He becomes indifferent towards trivial sums of money and constantly seeks avenues to indulge in extravagant spending. On one occasion, he splurges on an expensive lawnmower, despite having a modest garden at his residence. Another time, when his co-worker Jack mocks his old car, Paul's anger prompts him to impulsively purchase a sports car. However, he makes the error of paying for the car entirely in cash, arousing suspicion from the cautious car dealer. Believing that Paul may be involved in illicit activities, the dealer promptly notifies the authorities, leading to the arrival of Detective Miller at the scene. She extracts all relevant information from the car dealer and, upon connecting the dots, deduces that Paul may be engaged in unlawful endeavors. Determined to catch him in the act, she sets out on a mission to apprehend Paul. Meanwhile, Paul arrives at his workplace and proudly flaunts his luxurious car to Jack. Curious about its origin, Jack inquires about how Paul managed to afford such a luxury. In response, Paul fabricates a story, claiming that his deceased uncle left him a substantial inheritance of wealth. Subsequently, Paul returns home and astonishes his family with the new car. The children are thrilled with the acquisition, but his wife, Grace, begins to harbor suspicions. She confronts Paul, urging him to truthfully disclose the true source of his income. However, much like before, Paul dismisses her concerns and chooses to ignore her inquiries. During the subsequent days, Grace persistently poses the same question, yet Paul skillfully evades providing a genuine response. This recurring behavior leads to minor arguments between the couple. One morning, Tim, the elderly man, reappears outside their home, seeking a donation. However, in a sour mood, Paul rudely dismisses him. Shortly after Paul departs for work, Detective Miller arrives at the house and proceeds to interrogate Grace. She probes into her husband's occupation, and despite their recent disagreements, Grace staunchly defends Paul, asserting that he is an honest and diligent real estate agent who has never engaged in any illegal activities. Recognizing the lack of support from Paul's own family, Detective Miller takes it upon herself to take action. She diligently investigates Paul's background and discovers that he has not completed a single sale in the past month. This reinforces her conviction that he is involved in illicit activities. Meanwhile, Paul's life rapidly slips out of his control due to the relentless nagging he endures from his wife. She persistently demands to know the origin of his wealth, causing her own doubts about his integrity to gradually surface. To exacerbate matters, the money plant suddenly ceases to produce any cash, leading Paul to suspect that he has fallen victim to a curse. In an effort to dispel the curse and regain the plant's prosperity, Paul distributes money to those who may hold negative thoughts about him. He even visits Tim's office and makes a generous donation, hoping to restore the plant's functionality. However, Tim, impressed by Paul's character, imparts some words of wisdom. He advises Paul to share his wealth with those in need, assuring him that doing so will bring happiness and fulfillment. Intrigued by the idea, Paul leaves a substantial sum of money on Tim's desk before departing. Unfortunately, merely a few minutes later, Detective Miller arrives at the scene and notices the conspicuous pile of cash on Tim's table. This leads her to assume that the elderly man is an associate of Paul's and that both individuals are involved in illicit activities. That very night, unable to find solace in sleep, Paul ventures into the storeroom and exhausts every conceivable method to revive the plant. In a desperate attempt, he even turns to the Holy Bible, hoping for divine intervention. Regrettably, all his endeavors prove fruitless. The following morning, Paul visits a cafe and purchases a takeaway coffee for himself. On his way out, he encounters a homeless man and generously hands him a $100 bill, supporting his charitable facade. Additionally, Paul selflessly gives away his own coffee to ensure the man quenches his thirst. Unfortunately, Detective Miller reappears just as Paul departs. Observing the homeless man with the cash, she immediately assumes that he is an accomplice in Paul's illicit narcotics distribution activities. Consequently, she promptly apprehends him without affording him an opportunity to explain. Meanwhile, it is revealed that Paul had an important obligation to attend his son's crucial football match. However, true to his habit, he left home without informing anyone, leaving his son deeply disappointed and infuriated. Presently, Grace exhausts her efforts to reach Paul, but he obstinately refuses to answer any calls. When all else fails, she decides to visit Paul's workplace along with their daughter, Kari. To their dismay, the factory appears desolate and somber, devoid of any signs of workers. In an unsettling turn of events, Kari inadvertently enters a dubious-looking room and tumbles through a concealed hole covered by a cloth. It transpires that Paul was responsible for fixing the hole but instead chose to hide it to save time. Now, his own daughter has become the victim of his negligence. The subsequent scene takes us to the hospital, where it is revealed that Kari has sustained a fractured arm. Paul's colleague, Jack, seethes with anger towards him for consistently slacking off at work and displaying recklessness. Jack comes close to throwing a punch but restrains himself at the last moment before departing. Later on, Paul comes to a realization of his mistake and breaks down in tears in front of his wife. Throughout his life, he has resorted to shortcuts when he should have pursued more responsible approaches. As a result, his family has perpetually faced setbacks. Demonstrating her unwavering support as a loving wife, Grace forgives him entirely and encourages him to embark on a fresh start. During that fateful night, Kari is discharged from the hospital, bringing immense relief to everyone. Paul takes the opportunity to reconcile with his son, assuring him of unwavering support and a promise to never abandon him again. He has finally come to the realization that family holds paramount importance above all else. Determined to become a better person, Paul pledges to make amends. However, the very next morning shatters his newfound resolution as Detective Miller arrives at his doorstep and proceeds to arrest him. As Paul is escorted to jail, he finds himself bewildered upon encountering the homeless individual from before. Tim is also present, and he unveils the truth that he had been concealing. Tim discloses that he was the one who initially discovered the money plant, and gifted it to Paul's uncle during his time of hardship, hoping it would alleviate his struggles. However, the outcome was the complete opposite. As more money flowed in, greed consumed Paul's uncle, plunging him into a perilous abyss of depression. Yet, with the aid of guidance and counseling, he experienced a complete transformation. He redirected his wealth towards assisting those in need, ultimately finding genuine happiness. Upon concluding his narrative, Tim implores Paul to follow a similar path, emphasizing the importance of helping others in his vicinity. Surprisingly, a little while later, all three individuals find themselves unexpectedly released from jail. Surprisingly, it is revealed that Jack had fabricated a story for the authorities, claiming that both he and Paul had amassed immense wealth by selling a substantial property in New York. However, the truth is that Jack had orchestrated the entire transaction single-handedly, deceiving the police to protect his friend. With no substantial evidence against Paul, Detective Miller ceases her investigation, bringing it to a definitive halt. On the subsequent day, Tim's organization organizes a modest event, extending an invitation to Paul's entire family. The occasion serves as a temporary residence for orphaned children who lack guardianship. Tim had been collecting donations to sustain his project. Before long, Paul is called up on stage, and having been profoundly shaped by his life experiences, he delivers a heartfelt and poignant speech. Initially, Paul announces his intention to sell his sports car and contribute all the proceeds to the organization. He pledges to consistently support the children in any way possible, receiving a resounding applause from the attendees. His family and Jack, in particular, are deeply impressed by his commitment. In the concluding scene, we witness Paul and his family embarking on a vacation. Although he no longer possesses the abundant cash he once had when the money plant was flourishing, he finds contentment in his current state. Paul extends his hand in a handshake with Tim, returning the money plant as he now comprehends the genuine worth of life. Subsequently, he enters his car, accompanied by his family, thereby bringing the movie to a happy ending. Thank you for watching our movie recap. While it may seem simple, it actually took a lot of hard work and dedication to produce. If you enjoyed the video, we kindly ask you to show your support by liking and subscribing to our channel. By doing so, you'll stay updated on our latest content and help us continue creating more in-depth analyses and critiques of the movies you love. Thank you again for your support.